You know how in software development, it often feels like you need a totally different toolbox for every single job? Well, what if that wasn't the case? Today, we're going to open up one box that aims to do it all, the .NET ecosystem. It's this unified toolkit for building pretty much anything you can dream up. Just let that sink in for a minute. Imagine no more switching gears between your website code, your Windows app, and then your mobile apps for iOS and Android. Just one language, one set of skills, powering absolutely everything. Sounds amazing, right?
Well, guess what? That's not some far-off dream. That is the entire promise of the .NET universe. It's this powerful open-source platform from Microsoft that lets you do all of this with a language a lot of you probably already know and love, C#.
All right, so let's start where so many applications live these days, on the web. How does this .NET toolkit actually help us build modern, slick web applications?
So the bedrock for a ton of .NET web apps is this really solid pattern called MVC. It stands for Model View Controller. And you can think of it like a blueprint for just keeping your sanity. It neatly separates your data, your user interface, and all the logic in between. And trust me, that makes your projects so much easier to build, test, and maintain down the line.
So how's it work? Well, when you click something on a website, your browser sends a request to what's called a controller. The controller is kind of like the traffic cop. It figures out what you want, talks to the model to go get the necessary data, and then it passes all that information off to the view. And the view has one simple job: turn that data into the final web page you see. It's a really clean, predictable dance for every single request.
Okay, but what if you want something more interactive? Something that feels more like a desktop app, right in the browser? Well, that's where Blazor steps in. And this thing is a total game changer, because it lets you build all those rich user interfaces using C#, which means you don't have to be a JavaScript wizard to do it.
And with Blazor, you get this really fascinating choice. You can run your app on the server, which is great for fast loading and keeping all your code super secure. Or you can run the whole thing right inside the user's browser with something called WebAssembly, which is amazing because your app can even work offline. It really just comes down to what's more important for your project, that server-side security or all that client-side power.
So building for the web is one thing, but what about those apps that live right on your machine? Let's shift gears now from the browser to the native experience. Apps built for your desktop and your phone.
For building really powerful, graphically intense desktop apps on Windows, the tool you're going to reach for in the .NET Toolkit is WPF, or Windows Presentation Foundation. This is for when you need that top-tier performance and absolute control over every pixel of your Windows application.
And how do you build those interfaces in WPF? You use a markup language called XAML. So instead of writing a bunch of code to create a button, you just declare it. It's a really clean way of separating what your app looks like from what it does. Now keep that name, XAML, in the back of your head, because you're about to see it again.
And there it is. Let's talk mobile. Xamarin is the .NET answer to building native apps for both iOS and Android. And the magic here, the real kicker, is that you write the brains of your app just once, in C#, and then you share that logic across all the different platforms. That saves a ridiculous amount of time and effort.
Now, even within Xamarin, you've got another important choice to make. You can use Xamarin.Forms to share not just your logic, but your UI code too. That's perfect for business apps where you want everything to look and feel consistent. But if you need super high performance or some really specific platform-level features, you can use Xamarin Native to get that fine-grained control. And this, right here, is where you really start to see the beauty of this whole toolkit. Did you notice the common threads? That XAML language we use for our desktop app? Yep, you use it in Xamarin Forms too. And they both use a design pattern called MVVM, which is basically a cousin to that MVC pattern we saw earlier. The big takeaway here is that learning one of these tools makes you better at all the others.
So we've got our gorgeous user interfaces for the web, for desktop, and for mobile. But, an app without data is, well, it's not very useful. So how do we actually connect to our databases?
The answer, my friends, is ADO.NET. This is the absolute foundation for data access across the entire .NET ecosystem. You can think of it as the universal translator that lets your C# code speak to any database, whether that's a big SQL server, a simple XML file, or anything in between.
Now, inside ADO.NET, you've got a few main players. The data provider is what literally makes the connection. The data reader gives you this super efficient one-way fire hose of data. And then there's the data set, which is like having a little mini copy of your database right there in memory to play with.
And this brings up a really important strategic choice. Do you go with a connected approach, using that fast data reader, which needs a live connection to the database, or do you go disconnected with a data set, where you pull all the data into memory first and then work with it, even if you go offline? The right choice really depends on what your app needs to do.
All right, we've built the app. We've connected it to data. There's just one last piece to this puzzle, making sure our app is fast, responsive, and doesn't just freeze up on our users.
The secret sauce for this is something called parallel programming. I mean, think about it. Most of our computers today have multiple cores in their processors. They have multiple brains. Parallel programming is just the technique of using all of those brains at the same time to get stuff done way faster.
And .NET gives you this incredible set of tools to make this stuff so much easier than it sounds. You've got the task parallel library for running jobs at the same time. You've got parallel link to run your data queries across multiple cores. And my personal favorite, the async/await pattern, which is this beautifully simple way to do heavy lifting, like downloading a file, without ever freezing the user interface.
And that's really what it all comes down to, right? It's not about the fancy tech terms, it's about the user experience. Using these tools means your application feels snappy and responsive, even when it's doing really complex work in the background. It's about building something that just feels good to use.
So there you have it. From the web to your mobile phone, from handling data to making your code fly, .NET gives you this single, amazing toolkit. It's a whole ecosystem designed so you can share your skills and your code to build almost anything. So now that you've seen the tools, what are you going to build?